Here we have a 2012 Ford Focus fitted with the 1 litre Ecoboost Petrol engine, and it's got roughly 71,000 miles on the clock. As part of the service on this Focus today, I'm going to be doing an oil and filter change. So, as with all cars, I drain the oil on. I like to loosen the cap or take it right off and just pull the dipstick out, or you can pull it right out. It's only to allow air back into the engine as the oil's draining out, and hopefully it will drain out a bit smoother. As with a lot of cars nowadays, it's fitted with a under tray or under shield, belly pan, whatever you want to call it. Some of them have access cut out, so you can just take a sump plug out or take the oil filter off. But being as I'm doing a service, I like to take the whole tray off and get a better look at all the other components anyway. This one doesn't have a little cut out, so it's got to come off, whatever. Right, so now we've got the under shield off. Here's the sump, and here's the sump plug. It's a 13mm hex head size. The oil filter's up there, which is a spin-on one. We'll tackle that in a moment. I like to use, where possible, a single hex socket. There's nothing wrong with using a spanner. This just reduces the chance of rounding the head on the bolts. Gives you a little bit better purchase. Right, so this is quite hot, so it might come out fairly fast. So just be ready with your bucket or drain tray, whatever you're using, ready to catch it. Right, okay. So I'll just set this down here. Let that drain for a few moments. Right, so it's been draining for a while now. It's just down to a slow, steady drip that could go on for hours. Something to check before you put the sump plug back in. This one's got a rubber O-ring seal on it. Just make sure it isn't split or crushed. Normally they're good to go quite a few times. And this looks absolutely fine. Most sump plugs have a copper washer or an aluminium washer, and again, you've just got to make sure it's not crushed or split. So make sure your surface is reasonably clean, which that is. Just nip that up. That's it. We'll have a go at removing that oil filter next. Right, so I've chosen to use these. This is my kind of go-to tool for removing spin-on oil filters. There's several different tools on the market you can use, like a chain or a strap, or you can get the cups that go over the end of the filters. But these are generally okay, so we'll give it a go. I'm working a little bit cack-handed, just so you guys can see really. Right, that's loose. Hopefully we won't get a shower in oil. Just let that go for a little bit, because that's going to dribble out. Obviously make sure you've got your bucket or drainer ready to catch that. And when I do spin the oil filter off, I try and keep it upright so it doesn't go everywhere. A bit more oil coming out there. That's it. That's important when you take these off. Make sure the seal comes off with it, which this one has, because they do just pull out actually. Oh, that one's fairly tight in there. But they can pull out and remain on the housing up there. So that's just something to be mindful of. Right, so here we got the replacement filter. As you can see, it's not a genuine Ford one. I tend to go for name brands. You should be able to pick one of these up for under £10. Something to do before you refit it. You can use a bit of the old oil, you can use new oil, you can use a bit of grease, anything really. Just put a drop of oil on there and just put it around the seal. It just helps to prevent that seal from sticking to the housing for the next person who removes it. Right. So you don't need any tools to do it up, it just has to be hand tight. That's it, that'll do. I'll grab a bit of brake cleaner and a bit of blue roll. This is pretty good degreaser, so I'm just going to give this a blast around the area where it's all dripped while the drain is still underneath. It evaporates pretty quick, especially as the engine's hot as well. That's it. We'll drop it down next and start putting some oil back in. Right, let's get this bonnet open again. So oil filler cap's off. Make sure your dipstick is still up. This time when you're pouring the oil in, so the air can escape from the engine. Hopefully it'll go in without glugging back up through the filler and spilling everywhere. So when you go to the retail outlet, wherever you go to pick up your parts, make sure you've got your registration number with you, and they'll be able to recommend the type and viscosity of oil that's suitable for your particular engine. There's so many different ones on the market. It's important to get the right one, especially with these Ecoboost engines. The cam belt actually runs in oil. It's called a wet belt, and a lot of the reason they failed is because people put the wrong grade of oil in. Now, 5 litres of engine oil for this particular engine, you're probably looking around about the £70 mark, depending on what brand you go for. They said to me 4.1 litres when I purchased it, so I always like to slightly underfill. I'm going to go with about 3.8, 3.9 litres, and then just run it up and check on the dipstick. It's far easier just to keep topping up in little dribs and drabs rather than overfilling and having to get back underneath, which is why I haven't put the undershield back on yet, and then having to drain a little bit off. Because having too much engine oil can cause damage, the same as having not enough. So you need to get it as close to the maximum mark as possible. So all I'm going to do now is start it up and let it tick over for a few moments. Make sure the oil pressure light goes out. That's it, the light's gone out. It's important not to rev an engine as soon as you start it, because it takes a little while for the pump to pick the oil up and get it all around the bearings, especially if it's just been drained. But that light's gone straight out. Sounds good. And that's all you need to do. I'll switch it off there, and we'll let it stand for 3 or 4 minutes and then check on the dipstick and see where the level's at. Right, so I've got the dipstick removed. You can see the two notches there, the minimum and maximum. Hopefully I'm somewhere between and not over. I'm hoping I'm somewhere around halfway on that. That's about 3.8, 3.9 litres I've put in there. Yeah, that is pretty much halfway. So I'll leave that loose. Get that cap back off. It looks like it's going to take the whole 4.1, but I'll probably do it in a couple of stages. Just put a little bit in there. That's it. And I'll leave that going for a few moments. You don't have to start it up again because we've already run it and the engine's oil galleries are all full, the filter's full of oil. So it's just a case of topping it up in dribs and drabs, let it settle and check it on the dipstick. Keep repeating that process until you get as near to the maximum as possible without going over it. Right, okay, so I've topped it up a couple of times, just little bits at a time, and I am actually up to 4.1 litres now. Which, that looks to be correct. As you can see, it is below the maximum by a millimetre or two, but it's only been probably about 3 minutes since I've topped up, so if this is left to stand for another 20 minutes or so, I'm certain that'll be up to the maximum, so I won't put any more oil in at that stage. I'm happy with that. So we'll pop that back in. Get the cap back on. And that's just about it. Some of you might have noticed there's a little extra here which isn't standard. Probably car belongs to a plumber or something. It looks like they've lost the filler neck for the washer bottle and made their own. Obviously going to be a little bit tricky topping that up without a funnel, but it does the job, just in case you were wondering what that was sticking up there. Anyway, so the oil and filter job, that's pretty much done. We just got to take it up in the air now and pop the under tray back on. Right, get this under tray back on. The fittings, by the way, are Torx 30 bolts, like a star drive. So the job's now complete. I'm happy with the way it went. All that's left to do, as I do with most of my jobs, is just to give it a run around the block, perhaps bring it back in and make sure there's no leaks and check the oil filter's tight. Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully the video's been of some help for you, and if it has, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It will help our channel out no end. Cheers.